Did you know that your biggest problem in a tiny home is not the square footage? Is it the furniture? Think about it. Right now, across America, people are squeezing into spaces under 400 square feet and wondering why everything feels cramped and chaotic. And most of the time, the answer is sitting right in front of them. Literally, a couch that does one job, a table that just sits there, a closet that eats your space without giving anything back. Here's the thing nobody is talking about in the tiny home world. IKEA has spent decades, and I mean decades, studying how humans live in small spaces. Their design labs in Sweden have been obsessing over square footage problems longer than tiny homes have been a trend. And in 2026, they have over 1,500 new products in their lineup, many of them built specifically for people living small. Today, we're going to break down the IKEA X Tiny Living Playbook, the real hacks, the products that actually work, the mistakes people make at IKEA that cost them space. And yes, I'm saving the biggest, most counterintuitive hack for the very end of this video, because once you see it, you will never think about small space furniture the same way again. Stay with me. Let's get into it. Real quick before we dive in. If you're new here, welcome to Affordable Tiny Homes, where we give you honest, research-backed information on living big in a small space. Hit that subscribe button right now and tap the bell, because we drop new content every week and you do not want to miss a single one. All right, let's talk about IKEA. Here is your 2026 reality check. The global tiny home market has surged to $23.49 billion as of May 2026. Let me say that again, $23.49 billion. That is not a niche trend. That is a full-scale housing revolution happening in real time. Over 120 new tiny home communities were announced across the United States just this year alone. And here is the number that should stop you in your tracks. 73% of Americans say they would consider living in a tiny home. Among Gen Z and millennials, that number jumps to 75%. This is not a fringe movement anymore. This is mainstream. Now here is the 2026 snapshot that puts the design challenge into focus. Stationary tiny homes now account for 42% of the market, and the average floor area is 320 square feet. To put that in perspective, the average American home is around 1,900 square feet. We are talking about fitting your entire life into a space that is roughly 6 times smaller than what most people grew up in. That is where furniture becomes the most important decision you will make. Not the land, not the build, the furniture. Because in a tiny space, a bad furniture choice does not just look wrong. It physically makes your life harder every single day. And IKEA, whether you love them or not, has figured out some things about this that most furniture brands have not. Before I get into the specific hacks, I want to be honest with you, because that is what this channel is about. IKEA is not perfect. Some of their products feel cheaper after a few years. Assembly can be a half-day project, and if you live hours from a store, returns get complicated. But here is why IKEA wins for tiny living specifically. Number 1, modularity. Almost every major IKEA system, whether it is KALLAX, PX, Besta, or Billy, is designed to be combined, reconfigured, and expanded. That matters enormously in a tiny home because your needs change. A system that can evolve with you is worth far more than a single beautiful piece that cannot. Number 2, price. In a tiny home, you're often buying multiple pieces of furniture for a space that most people would furnish with 2 or 3 items. IKEA lets you do that without destroying your budget. Number 3, the design philosophy. In 2026, IKEA has leaned heavily into what they call their IKEA for business approach, and this extends into residential planning. They now offer specific small home floor plan guides in their 2026 catalog, built around real 320 square foot layouts. Their products are not guesses. They are the result of watching real people live in real small spaces and engineering solutions to what breaks and what works. Okay, with that locked in, let's get into the actual hacks. 7 of them, room by room. The KALLAX shelving unit runs $79.99 in 2026. Most people look at it and see a bookcase. Tiny home people should look at it and see a wall. Here is the hack. In a studio tiny home or an open plan layout, your biggest problem is that everything blurs into everything else. Your sleeping area bleeds into your living area, which bleeds into your work area. That spatial confusion makes your home feel smaller and more chaotic than it actually is. The KALLAX strategically creates zones without adding walls. You get the visual separation that tells your brain you are in a different room, and you get storage on both sides. The KALLAX 4x4 unit gives you 16 open cubes. Combine it with KALLAX inserts, some with doors, some with drawers, and suddenly you have a room divider that also functions as your media storage, your linen closet, your book collection, or your craft supplies. IKEA even sells a KALLAX planner tool on their website to help you configure it exactly to your dimensions. Use it. One honest limitation: the KALLAX is not the sturdiest piece in their catalog. Some users note the quality has softened slightly compared to older versions, with more plastic components replacing metal ones. If you're using it as a room divider, anchor it to the wall using the included anti-tip hardware. In 2026, safety regulations for modular furniture are stricter than ever, and this is not optional when kids or pets are in the picture. Hack 2. The PX Wardrobe Built-in Illusion. One of the most expensive things you can add to a tiny home is custom built-in storage. We are talking $3,000 to $10,000 for a custom closet system installed by a carpenter. The PX Wardrobe System lets you replicate that look for a fraction of the cost. And the key, the thing that takes it from looking like flat-pack furniture to looking like an intentional architectural feature, is ceiling height and trim. Here is how tiny home builders and small space designers do it. You order PX frames that reach as close to your ceiling height as possible. Then you add crown molding or a simple trim board above the units to fill the gap between the top of the PX and the ceiling. Add matching paint on the interior back panels and use the same door style throughout. Suddenly, you do not have IKEA wardrobes. You have a built-in wall of storage that looks completely custom. People who visit your tiny home will not immediately clock it as a flat pack. In 2026, verified pricing for PX-based combinations starts at $620 and runs to around $1,180, depending on size and interior fittings. That is higher than it was a couple of years ago due to supply chain shifts, but compare that to $3,000 to $10,000 for a custom carpenter build, and the math still lands firmly in IKEA territory. Use the PX Planner tool on the IKEA website. Build the whole configuration virtually before you buy a single piece. Measure twice, buy once. The honest trade-off: PX takes time to assemble and gets complex with multiple units. Set aside a full day for a floor-to-ceiling installation. It is worth it, but do not underestimate the time commitment. Hack 3. The U-Taker Stackable Bed System. If you have guests in a tiny home, you know the anxiety. Where are they sleeping? Does someone end up on an air mattress on the floor? The U-Taker Stackable Bed is one of the most elegant solutions IKEA has for this problem. In 2026, it will be sold as a 2-pack frame at $349. Here is what it does. It stacks as 2 twin mattresses on a solid pine base that functions as a daybed or sofa during the day. When you need it, you pull the bottom frame out and you have 2 separate twin beds, or push them together for a double. It is genuinely transformable. And in a tiny home, transformable furniture is not a luxury. It is the strategy. The honest conversation: mattresses are sold separately. Budget at least $100 to $200 per mattress on top of the frame cost to get a setup that your guests will not complain about in the morning. Hack 4. The Sleeper Sofa Strategy, Finale, and the 2026 Alternatives. I need to be straight with you on this one, because I have seen other channels get this pricing wrong, and I am not going to do that to you. If you have heard that the Finale Sleeper Sofa starts at $399, that figure refers to an individual love seat section or a cover, not the full sleeper unit. In 2026, a full Finale Sleeper Sofa is priced at approximately $1,169 and up. That is still a competitive price for what it does, but you need to budget accurately. Here is what the Finale does when you get the full sleeper configuration. It is a modular sectional sofa that converts into a bed in under a minute with one person operating the mechanism. The covers are removable and washable. For a tiny home where your living space needs to double as a sleeping space, this remains a legitimate option. But if the Finale price point is outside your budget, 2 2026 alternatives worth looking at are the Barslav and the Vimmel Sleeper Sofas. Both are top sellers this year for small space living, and both now come with improved 10-year guarantees, which matters when a sofa is also your bed. The bottom line: do not underestimate the cost of a quality sleeper sofa. Budget honestly, and you'll be glad you did. Hack 5. The vertical kitchen wall with Scotties and Brogrunt. In a tiny home kitchen, counter space is currency. Every inch of counter you lose to a knife block, a paper towel holder, or a fruit bowl is an inch you cannot get back. The solution is vertical thinking, and IKEA has 2 products that solve this brilliantly. First, the Scotties pegboard. This is a perforated panel that mounts to your wall and accepts a variety of hooks, shelves, bins, and containers. Mount it above your counter or on any bare kitchen wall, and suddenly you have vertical storage for your most used tools, spices, utensils, and small appliances. The counter stays clear. Everything is still accessible. Second, the Brogrunt towel rail. This stainless steel rail mounts under your cabinets or on a wall and holds hooks for hanging items. Cups, colanders, cutting boards, cleaning supplies. Things that would otherwise eat up drawer or cabinet space. These 2 products together, for well under $100 total, can add what feels like an extra 2 to 3 feet of functional kitchen space. Not real square footage, but functional space, which is what actually matters in a tiny kitchen. And one bonus hack while we are in the kitchen. In 2026, the Langhop pull-out desk is now Matter compatible, meaning it integrates with your smart home system. If you're building a smart tiny home setup, that is a piece worth keeping on your radar. Bonus storage tip within the hack. Use Pluggy's bins with Velcro strips inside your cabinet doors. Hidden storage that costs almost nothing and uses space you're already ignoring. Hack 6. The Besta Media wall that stores everything. The Besta system is one of the most underrated products in the IKEA lineup for tiny home living. Most people look at it and think of TV stands. Tiny home thinkers should look at it and think, the one wall that does everything. Here is how to use Besta effectively. In a tiny home living room, you typically have one primary wall where the TV lives. That wall is already occupied visually, so you're not losing anything by going floor to ceiling on it. Besta units stack. They sit side by side. They can incorporate TV lifts, hidden media equipment storage, book storage, linen storage, and decorative display space all in one cohesive unit. The result is that your entire entertainment and storage system lives on one wall, floor to ceiling, and the rest of your floor space stays open. Open floor space is what makes a tiny home feel spacious. Every square foot of clear floor is a win. Besta also comes with a 10-year limited warranty, which is meaningful when you are buying furniture for a permanent tiny home. That is IKEA acknowledging this system is built for the long haul. The honest consideration. Besta requires precise measurement and planning. Use the IKEA planning tool before you buy a single piece. Measure your wall height, ceiling height, and TV dimensions. Build the whole configuration virtually. The planning tool exists for a reason. Hack 7. The one everybody gets wrong. The big reveal. This section is delivered directly to camera, slow and deliberate. This is the withheld reveal. Do not rush it. Okay, this is the one I promised you at the beginning. The counterintuitive hack. The one that makes people go, wait, seriously? I'm going to give it to you right now. But first I need to set up why it works, because without the context it just sounds strange. The most common mistake people make when furnishing a tiny home is buying small. They think, small space, small furniture. So they buy a little love seat instead of a real sofa, a tiny coffee table, a small rug, small art. Everything is miniaturized. And the result? Their tiny home looks like a dollhouse. Everything feels fragile, temporary, and accidentally small. The space does not feel curated. It feels like they could not afford full-size furniture. Here is the counterintuitive truth that interior designers and tiny home specialists know. In a small space, one large statement piece almost always works better than several small pieces. A large KALLAX unit as a room divider reads as intentional architecture. A large area rug that goes almost wall to wall makes a tiny room feel grounded and bigger, not smaller. A floor-to-ceiling Besta wall reads as a design choice, not a space constraint. And the IKEA hack that ties this all together, the Billy bookcase wall. The Billy bookcase is $79 and has been one of the best-selling pieces of furniture in history for a reason. In a tiny home, you take multiple Billy units, place them side by side along one full wall, floor to ceiling using the Billy height extension units, and you add matching cabinet doors on the bottom half for hidden storage. You now have a custom library wall that functions as your bookshelves, your linen storage, your filing system, your display space, and your entire home organization system on one wall, looking like something from an interior design magazine. The cost: typically $400 to $700, depending on how many units you need. The custom built-in equivalent: often $5,000 or more. But here is the 2026 design upgrade that takes this hack to the next level. It is called color drenching, and it is the #1 technique designers are using right now to make large furniture disappear into a small room. The method is simple. Paint your Billy or PX units the exact same color as the walls behind them. Not a close match, the exact same color. When the furniture and the walls share the same shade, the furniture stops reading as furniture. It reads as architecture. The room feels larger because there are no visual breaks competing for your eye. Do not minimize everything. Maximize one wall. Paint it to match. Let that wall do the heavy lifting, and let your floor space breathe. That is the IKEA X tiny living secret for 2026. Before you pull up the IKEA website, let me save you from 3 mistakes I see people make constantly. Mistake number 1: buying without measuring. IKEA has strict dimensions, and the difference between a PX unit that fits perfectly and one that is 2 inches too tall for your ceiling is the difference between a great result and an expensive headache. Measure everything twice. Use the planning tools. Mistake number 2: ignoring the wall anchoring instructions. IKEA includes anti-tip devices with virtually every tall piece of furniture for a reason. In a tiny home, you may have less clearance between furniture and walls, which can create tipping risks. In 2026, safety regulations for modular furniture are stricter than ever. Anchor everything tall to a wall. No exceptions. Mistake number 3: buying everything at once before testing the layout. Tiny homes have unusual proportions. What works in a regular apartment floor plan may not work in your specific build. Start with the 1 or 2 most critical pieces. Live with them for 2 to 4 weeks, then buy the next layer. It costs you a little more in time, but saves you from filling your 320 square foot home with furniture that does not work together. Let us talk about real numbers, because this channel is about affordability and honesty. If you were to build out a 320 square foot tiny home using the IKEA systems we covered today, here is a reasonable budget estimate based on verified May 2026 pricing. A KALLAX room divider configuration: $160 to $320, depending on size and inserts. The individual unit runs $79.99. A PAX built-in wardrobe wall: $620 to $1,180 for a full wall, depending on depth and interior fittings. This figure reflects the 2026 price increase from supply chain shifts. A Finala sleeper sofa or comparable alternative, such as Barslav, $1,100 to $1,300 for a full sleeper configuration. A Besta Media wall system, $400 to $700 for a floor-to-ceiling build. A Billy bookcase wall with extension tops, $400 to $700 for a full wall of units. A U-Taker stackable bed 2-pack, $349 plus mattresses. Kitchen organization with Scotties and accessories, under $100. Total for a comprehensively furnished tiny home, roughly $3,000 to $4,500. For context, the average custom furniture package for a tiny home can run $8,000 to $20,000. IKEA, done correctly, delivers 70 to 80% of the functionality at 25 to 30% of the cost. That is the math of tiny living with IKEA in 2026. Here is what I want you to take away from this video. Living in a small space is not about sacrifice. It is about strategy. The people who thrive in tiny homes are not the ones who gave things up. They're the ones who figured out how to use every inch of what they have intentionally and intelligently. IKEA has built a product ecosystem that, when you understand the logic behind it, is genuinely one of the best tools available for tiny living. Not because it is luxury, but because it is modular, adaptable, and affordable. 3 things that matter more in a tiny home than anywhere else. The Billy wall with color drenching. The PX built-in illusion. The KALLAX room divider. The Besta Media wall. The Finala or Barslav sleeper. The vertical kitchen system. These are not just furniture purchases. They are infrastructure decisions for how you're going to live. Make them intentionally. If you made it this far, thank you. Genuinely. Drop a comment below and Tell me which of these 7 hacks is most useful for your current situation. I read every single comment. And if you have not subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? We do this every week. Real data, honest trade-offs, and the practical information you actually need to make tiny living work. I will see you in the next one.